Welcome, everyone, to Mythstorie, the podcast about myths and history. I am one of your hosts, Bryant, with permanent guest and co-creator Cammy. Cammy, welcome back to your show.
Thank you, Bryant. Thanks for welcoming me.
Absolutely. So, everyone, you know how it goes on the show. We pick a random topic or myth, legend, historical event. We've been having some fantastic shows lately. Holy Grail was a lot of fun, and we've got something that's very closely related to that in the Holy Lance. As always, Cammy's going to give a story regarding that, and then I'm going to lead a discussion talking about the history and some of the sources regarding the Holy Lance. Now, this is the one that pierced that dude Jesus Christ about 2,000 years ago.
Right.
2023 years ago no, it didn't happen when he was born. What am I talking about? About 2,000 years ago. Wouldn't that suck if you were born and just getting stabbed? Yeah. So if you're joining us now, we appreciate you. I am happy to say there's a show that's very similar to ours, but infinitely popping off more right now, called Mythstories, or it's a segment called
With an
Mythstories.
S.
Yes. Mythstories. It's Shane Todd, Irish comedian, who's doing it. If you're one of his stragglers, you clicked here thinking he had another episode. He probably does, but welcome. Please stick around and listen. So anyway, Cammy, you got a story about the Holy Lance.
I do.
And the Roman dude who held it, named Longinus, evidently, allegedly. Hit us with that story.
Sure. So I use the King James Version of the Bible, John 19, and the Wikipedia article for the Holy Lance, and I also use the Britannia article for the Holy Lance as well.
Awesome.
From that day, when Pilate took the king and set upon his head a crown of thorns, and on his body purple robes, there was born a holy relic. For the last wound of Christ was inflicted with the spear of a Roman soldier, Longinus. From the wound in his side spat blood and water, which bathed the object in all that is holy. And they carried off the body of the dead king, and the spear was carried off as well into obscurity. The remarkable weapon was said to be housed with the others of the empire until it disappeared. Though it was thought to be kept in Jerusalem until Hadrian sacked the city. And the object was then lost until Helena, mother of Constantine, sought to recover the relics of Jerusalem by excavation. And in the city's basilica, the lance was found, its body forming a cross. But then again, it was lost. Some say it turned up in St. Peter's Basilica under the Vatican. Some say Armenia holds the treasure, others Antioch, and of course, Vienna. But the true spear and all of its parts may never be known to man again, lost in all its holiness to legend and fable.
That's a great little story. I don't know why the Romans would be like, we got to keep this in the first place,
Yeah.
though, at this time.
Oh,
But
I do know. Okay, so there is a story, and I don't think I read this recently. I think I just know this. But so Longinus supposedly was blind in one eye or had something wrong with his eye.
yeah,
And the blood got in it and it cured his eye. And so he is the one that
he's just
kept
like,
it.
oh no, I effed up. Oh God, this guy is
Yeah,
the
and
Messiah. Jesus Christ. Oh,
oh no. Yeah, so that's like part of the story. Like I said, I don't think I read that recently. I think I just
Sure.
knew it, but
That's interesting. I didn't come across that, but I wasn't necessarily looking for that kind of evidence. I want to know because I love mention the B word, Byzantium. Constantine, the founder of the Eastern Empire, essentially founder of Constantinople, Nova Roma. His mother Helena. She was indeed someone who sought the relics. She is really kind of credited almost with being one of the first Christian pilgrims too. She made the first pilgrimage to Jerusalem, and made that a big deal. And she like on the way there, she helped she kind of helped make a path to Jerusalem for everyday goers. That would of course be incredibly important for just today, but for the next
right.
few thousand years, that having that access was really important to the pilgrim routes and stuff like that. Even when Muslim armies took over, and they would still make deals with Christian kingdoms to let the trades go because it was money and it was popular. So that was really cool. And I have something to say too about the spear being in Antioch, because that's a funny story, and which I kind of mentioned before in the past. But yeah, it's cool. So my brain kept like, when you kept saying Longinus, who allegedly was the name of the Roman. Apparently, he might have been a centurion, which I'll talk about what's the difference in a minute, because I didn't know this. But Longinus is like in a ton of like fantasy video games. Longinus is like a spear. It's a weapon. And
yeah, it is in a lot of.
yeah,
Okay.
right. And so I kept
Wait,
thinking,
is that like a thing that it means
100%.
that?
Oh,
Okay.
100%. Yeah. I guess so I'm sure that some games have like Holy Lance and stuff like that, but Longinus is pretty cool because it sounds cool and has the word long in it, and it's a spear. So it makes
True.
sense. It just sounds right. But yeah, so I kept like like when you were like, oh, hey, we're working on the Longinus episode, I'd be like, what was that again? Oh yeah, that's the dude who held it. So I just thought that was cool. I'm pretty sure like a Final Fantasy or something for sure did, as well as a few other like Japanese role-playing games, that sort of thing. So I thought that was really interesting. That it's kind of it's a subtle reference there.
Sure.
But yeah, the Holy Lance is kind of how it's attributed to, and it's tough. It's just kind of like the Holy Grail, which again, really fun to read about and see its like popularity, like boom. It's a lot like Christianity. Christianity took roots in the early ADs, but didn't go big until like 400 AD, when it was being adopted and went widespread and commercial, and that's when these sort of things would come out, these stories. The oldest reference we have is the Gospel of Nicodemus, which is the 3rd or 4th century AD. This tells the story of Longinus,
Okay.
and the lance is said to have miraculous powers. And in this story, it's eventually taken to Constantinople, which indeed the Roman emperor, I can't remember which Roman emperor it would have been. It would have been in the 11th century, I believe, during the Second or Third Crusade. So they're mounting the Crusades. A lot of the way to the east was through Constantinople. That was the land route. And so the emperor of the time, he did have all these Western knights come through. This is hundreds of years after the schism between the Catholic and Orthodox Church. West and East are really weird. All these Western knights come. They think the Greeks are weird. That's what they call them. They like, it's a very it's an insult. The effeminate Greeks is kind of the way they see them because of how it is. Compared to the Dark Age, Western, like, Paris is like as big as it gets, but Constantinople trumps
Yeah,
that.
so in the Dark Ages, you're not covered in mud, you're effeminate.
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
Right. So they're seeing him, and he's literally, the emperor is using the Crusades so that way he can stop the Muslim advance, because his army sucks at this time. The Byzantine decline, like military isn't that great, and he uses the Western Knights and the idea of like getting to Jerusalem and reclaiming it. But he also wants he wants Antioch, he wants Acre, all these cities on the way to it to help get the empire back some of its taxable land and stuff. And so he can't like force these like crazy Norman and English knights under his heel, but he overwhelms them with like, exotic stuff. And he shows them, he's like, those are the Tano clippings of St. Peter. This is the Holy Lance. And they believe him. And it's really funny. So the siege of Antioch was a really intense siege. They were like starving. They've been eating they've been drinking their horses' blood to like survive in their own urine because of how like bad the supply chain was. Things were not going well. The Crusaders take Antioch thanks to some Norman mischievousness. But there is this, I've talked about him before, this crazy dude, Saint Bartholomew. Or no, hold on. Let me find my Peter Bartholomew, not Saint. Sorry, no. Peter Bartholomew, Siege of Antioch in 1098. So like things aren't going well. People are deserting.
I think he's the one with the flayed skin in the painting in the Vatican, right?
Maybe, I don't know.
The flayed skin of Bartholomew.
He was
I'm pretty sure
schmuck.
it's like,
maybe. But
the angels are like, or the demons are like
I've
tearing
seen
it
that
off.
picture. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just skin. Yeah.
It might be him. He was a wacko guy. He every time the the siege was the Crusades were going bad, he'd be like, guys, listen, thank goodness, Saint so and so came to me and said, let's
I'm
have,
pretty sure he is a saint. If it's
he,
the same dude.
um, but so he during this, Peter Bartholomew had a vision in which Saint Andrew told him that the Holy Lance was buried in the Church of Saint Peter in Antioch. So yeah, they were in Antioch. They were being besieged, I think, is what it was.
Okay.
And so they like dig. They're like, let's fast for like 2 days and dig. And not that there's any food to eat anyway.
Sure.
But and he finds like a rusty piece of metal, and he's like, this is it. And not to mention like the nobility, because not everyone could, of course, go into the city, but the nobility's like, the emperor literally just showed me the Holy Lance, as well as like, St. Mary's breast milk in a vial. Like
Sure.
and so like they're all like shutting up though, because it's morale is so low, desertion is high, and they're able to get through it. But so that's a fun story about the Holy Spear being in Antioch. And I kind of mentioned this before in one of our Two Truths and a Lie that we did a long time ago.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really funny. So yeah, the Peter Bartholomew, there's no way he's a saint. I don't think there's anything. Dude was
I
wacko.
don't know if it's the same dude.
There's
We
a
need
lot
to
of
look
Pete's
it
out
up.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I love that's just one of my favorite stories. That was one of the stories in Lars Brownworth's story, or I read his book on Byzantium, the
Right.
Byzantine Empire, called Lost to the West. He did a book on the Crusades as well, because there's so much overlap here. And yeah, so In Distant Lands is what that book is called. Lars Brownworth. All of them are excellent reads. All of his books are just like perfect, especially for this timeline. But so yeah, the Gospel of Nicomedes is the first thing that talked about Longinus, the first reference to him, the first reference really to the story. We also have the History of the Church by Eusebius of Caesarea, the Pilgrim's Egeria's Diary. These are both in the 4th century AD. Again, so this rise is happening. All this is flourishing. The Chronicle of Pseudo Jerome in the 6th century, and the Book of the Holy Lance in the 12th century. So straight to the point with those guys right there. Yeah, it's tough. I don't know if there's really any. I'm sure several places claim to have it today, like you say, but the authenticity is really tough. And
Right.
for
The
me,
Vatican hasn't said anything is right. They do have a spear housed. I think it's still there.
yeah, it looks so. From what I've got is that it's the actual existence and authenticity is disputed. Some experts believe the lance is held in Vienna's imperial treasury. But it looks like it's likely just
and
a
that's the
medieval
one that
artifact.
Hitler tried to confiscate, and I don't know if he ever got his hands on it.
I could see that.
Yeah, he was trying to I think raise the dead. Supposedly Constantine, I know a lot more about this than I should. I don't know why. Supposedly Constantine's mother, to try to figure out, was it what? It might have been the lance, or it might have been the crosses that they had, but they laid a dead body down. I think it was the crosses. So there were 3 crosses that she found in Jerusalem, and the first 2 didn't do anything, and then the third one raised the dead. And so I think that's what Hitler was trying to do, was just have like a dead army. Which we're gonna get into with John Dee
right
later. But
and I kind of misspoke. So in one of the earliest sources is the Bible, the New Testament.
Sure.
It is said in John 19:31 through 37. Instead, one of the soldiers pierced Jesus' side with a spear, bringing a sudden flow of blood and water. So, I'm guessing, yeah, once Christianity went mainstream in the Roman culture sphere, people were, coming up with a bunch of stuff. And I just really wonder where Longinus came from. Oh, and just to say too, so it said that Longinus was a centurion, which I never knew this. I mean, I've heard that word before, but centurion were their commissioned officers in the Roman army. So kind of like a knight. They had a little bit more going on. Usually you had you'd have a higher social status. You would lead and train, maintain discipline. And you had to have it served in the army for at least 16 years and have like a track record. So
and there were only 100 of them, while there were 1,000 of the militia. No, I'm just making things up. Just
I can see where you were going. Millie, yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that there's something there just like decimation.
There
But that's a
probably
little
is,
less
yeah.
friendly. Yeah,
I probably knew it at some point and just forgot.
sure. But that I didn't realize that. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense they'd have to have like officers, but that's what centurions were that. So I thought that was pretty wild. So yeah, the spear is incredibly important still today, but it's authenticity is disputed. But it was kind of nice to see, because when we talked about the Holy Grail, everything came up in like the 10th century for that. It was all during the Arthurian legend literature flourishing through Europe. So it was really cool to see that this actually had a lot of it was a lot more based, coming specifically from the Bible, and then coming as early as the 3rd or 4th century from the Gospel of Nicodemus. So it's fun. It's fun. The older these things are, the more the more you get into it. And then of course, just that story with Peter Bartholomew just makes me laugh. Yeah, I that's about all I've got for it. There isn't too much more I have. It's a fun little story, and I'm glad that we got to talk about it. It was a great way to kind of round about everything. But I don't know, do you have anything else that you want to add today?
Just that I'm infinitely surprised how much stuff I just remembered.
Right. Yeah.
While we were discussing that.
Right. Exactly. No, I love it. Well, yeah. If you think we missed anything regarding the Holy Lance, please let us know. I'm trying to think of because the Holy Grail, Indiana Jones and all that. I'm trying to think if there was like anything.
So, okay, the new movie. I
Yeah.
haven't seen it, but supposedly, in that he is looking for the lance at first, and then he finds it, and it's not real. So then he goes on to this other quest of the Dial of Destiny or something else. So
Oh, that's cool. I gotta watch that. I wonder if it's on Disney
I want to
Plus
see
yet.
the new one. Like
Yeah.
I feel like it's like probably in the dollar theater now. So I call it
Yeah.
that. It's probably the $10 theater, but
Which is what $1's worth. Yeah.
right.
No, that's great. Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I could see that. How do you authenticate that, huh, Indy? What are you doing?
I mean, it probably was supposed to do something magical and it
You
didn't.
bring a
'Cause
blind guy
that's
and rub it on his face, and it just makes him bleed. And you're like, ooh, not it. Excellent. Well, Cammy, thank you for your story.
Thank you, Bryant.
These have been some really fun episodes lately. Bermuda was really fun. Holy Grail was fantastic.
And
Let us
we've
know
got
if
a
you
full
have.
month of Halloween coming up.
Yes, always fun in October. So if you have any suggestions, let us know. Mythstorie, all one word, IE at the end, no S. We're not Irish comedians, but we appreciate them. Get in touch with us if you need anything. Please rate, review, all that good stuff. And yeah, I think that's about it. All right, Cammy. We will see you guys next time.
Oh.